Hello, welcome to Grandma Reads, where reading energizes and develops soul. We will be reading Pass It On, Pass It On by Gloria J. McEwen Burgess, illustrated by Gerald Purnell. Ernie loved to read. He loved to read big books, little books, long books, and short books. His parents were too poor to buy books, but that didn't stop Ernie. He borrowed them from his teachers, and when he found one in the trash, he'd fish it out and read it. Ernie's family lived in a small segregated town called Oxford, Mississippi. To provide for their four children, his parents had to work from sunup until sundown, most often in the cotton fields. They planted cotton seeds in the early spring and picked the crop all through the fall. During the picking season, Ernie's parents worked day after day, filling their long burlap bags with the fluffy white balls of cotton. When the bags were full, they dragged them to the edge of the field where the cotton was weighed and loaded into large wooden wagons. Then the seeds were removed and the cotton was pressed into big bales to be shipped down the Mississippi River. Ernie wished his parents didn't have to work so long and so hard. He was always glad when weekends arrived. Every Saturday morning, the family rode in their horse or mule drawn wagon to buy food and supplies. In town, Ernie sometimes saw and heard things he didn't understand, and he would get a funny feeling inside. Mama, why can't I use that drinking fountain? The one we have to use says colored, but the water sure looks the same to me. Papa, why do we always have to go in the back door of the grocery store? And why does Mr. Henderson always call you boy? That's not your name, and you're sure not a boy. Ernie's dad would shake his head and say, Hush, son, that's just the way things is. As usual, on the long ride home, Ernie's nose was buried in a book. He was reading one of his favorites, a book about buildings and how they were put together. Someday I'll build my very own house, he told his mother. You and Papa can come live with me. We'll even have running water. His mother just looked at him with tired, loving eyes and said, Oh, Junior, you're such a dreamer. You'll see, Mama. Someday I'll even go to college. You'll see. But how? Even as a young boy, Ernie knew that very few blacks were able to go to school, let alone college. He also knew that going to college would cost a lot of money. Every day after school, he went from house to house, selling packets of seeds, using all the money he earned to buy books. His friends would follow along, teasing him for working so hard, but that never stopped Ernie. As he grew older, Ernie was determined to hold on to his dreams, even though his friends thought reading was a waste of time. Ernie was the first person in his family to go to high school. While he was there, he met Millie, a bright girl with a loving smile who didn't make fun of his ideas. They spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing their dreams. As time passed, they fell deeply in love and decided to marry. When the young couple had their first child, a precious little girl, they named her Doris Ann. Before long, they were blessed with two more beautiful little girls, Annie Ruth and Gloria Jean. Even though Ernie now had a family to support, he still held on to his dream of going to college. One Saturday morning, he was in town sharing news with friends when one of his buddies called out, "Hey Ernie, did you hear they're looking for someone to take care of those big fancy buildings at the university?" "Oh, miss, I'd give anything to have a job there." Ernie knew that work at the university was steady and the pay was better than most places. It was just the kind of job he needed to move closer to his dream. Ernie woke up bright and early on Sunday morning. He put on his best shirt and pants, laced up his black leather shoes, then walked through town to Ole Miss. A janitor's position was open, and he was hired right on the spot. Ernie took great pride in his work and believed that whatever the task, he should always do his very best. He polished the floors until they glowed. He scrubbed the toilets until they were spotless and washed the windows until they sparkled. While working at Ole Miss, Ernie's love for learning grew stronger than ever. He went to work early and stayed late to read newspapers, books, old magazines, anything he could find. Several of the teachers noticed Ernie reading day after day. One morning, a kind gentleman named Dr. Guest offered to let the young man use his office before and after work. Ernie was grateful to have a quiet place to read. Early one morning, he was reading. While he was reading, Ernie heard the office door open. He looked up, expecting to see Dr. Guest. Instead, a total stranger walked in. The man wore a hat, a bow tie, and a tan-colored suit. His brown shoes were polished to a shine. "You must be Ernest McEwen," he said. Ernie quickly stood up and put down his book, surprised that this man knew him by name. "Dr. Guest has told me about you. He says that you work hard, read anything you can get your hands on, and have a burning desire to go to college." Ernie had no idea why Dr. Guest had told this stranger so much about him, but he nodded in agreement. "I love my job here at Ole Miss, sir, but I'd give anything to attend college myself." "I admire your drive and determination," the man said. "My name is Dr. Love." Dr. Love could see how deeply Ernie wanted to go to college. "Mr. McEwen," he said, "I think I know someone who might help you with your dream." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper with a name written on it. When you go to see this gentleman, tell him I sent you. With that, Dr. Love tipped his hat and left the room. Ernie was shocked when he read the name, William Faulkner. He'd heard many stories about the reclusive writer who lived at Roanoke, a large old home at the edge of town. But like most people in Oxford, Ernie had never met the world-famous author. Amazed and puzzled, he carefully tucked the paper into his pocket, wondering why this man would even care about his dreams. The next day, Ernie put on his Sunday best clothes and black leather shoes. As he walked up the long stone pathway to Roanoke, he didn't know what to expect. When he reached the front door, Ernie took a deep breath and knocked, then waited nervously. A dark-skinned woman in a yellow dress and white apron opened the door, greeting him with a friendly smile. "You must be Ernest McEwen. Mr. Faulkner has been expecting you. Please wait here for just a moment." As Mr. Faulkner walked toward him, Ernie's heart was pounding, but to his surprise, he felt immediately at ease with the celebrated writer. They talked for hours that afternoon in the shade of the giant oak tree surrounding the house. Mr. Faulkner listened intently as Ernie spoke about his lifelong dream of going to college. "Ever since I was a boy, I've loved to read books. From these books, I've learned that things can be very different from the way they are here in Oxford. My wife and I have struggled all our lives, but we've never forgotten our dreams. We want our girls to have a better life than we've had." Mr. Faulkner could feel Ernie's passion for learning and saw the determination in his eyes. "Mr. McEwen," he asked, "do you have a college in mind?" "Yes, sir," Ernie said. "Alcorn. It's a long way from here, over 200 miles, but I've heard it's a wonderful school that provides a solid education for blacks." "Excellent choice, Mr. McEwen. If I may, I'd like to help you with your dreams." Ernie couldn't believe his ears. At first, he was overjoyed, but after a long silence, he slowly shook his head. "I want to go to college more than anything in the world, but I can't accept your generous offer. I just don't see how I'd ever be able to pay you back." With a twinkle in his eye, Mr. Faulkner smiled. "I don't expect you to pay me back. I'm just glad I can help you and your family." "But sir, how can I ever thank you?" The famous author reached out to shake Ernie's hand. "Mr. McEwen, the only thing I would ask is that when someone else needs a kindness, you pass it on." Before leaving Roanoke, Ernie stopped at the edge of the woods and knelt on the cool grass beside an old magnolia tree. With tears flowing down his cheeks, he said a prayer of gratitude for his family, Dr. Guest, Dr. Love, and William Faulkner. With each step on the long walk home, Mr. Faulkner's words echoed in Ernie's mind. Pass it on, pass it on, pass it on. Ernie couldn't wait to tell his family the good news. When he saw Millie standing on the front porch, he ran to her as fast as he could. Mr. Faulkner is helping me go to Alcorn. Millie threw her arms around him and they danced with joy. But her mind was racing with questions. How will we live so far apart for so long? Will I be able to raise our daughters all by myself? Even with her worries, Millie laughed as she watched her husband twirling around the porch with their youngest daughter, Gloria J. Ernie's face was glowing. There's more, Millie, he said with a grin. We're all going to Alcorn. You, me, and our girls. Now it was Millie who couldn't believe her ears. Ernie squeezed her hand and gathered his family around. We are so blessed. We have each other, we have our faith, and now our dream is finally coming true. That fall, Ernie enrolled at Alcorn A&M College. Even after graduating, he and Millie still had to work very hard, but they did make a better life for their family. By believing in himself and passionately following his dreams, Ernie created a lifelong ripple effect of learning and generosity, not only for his own family, but in the lives of countless others. And he never forgot his pledge to pass it on, pass it on, pass it on. So remember 3, 2, 1. 3 things that you have learned as a result of hearing the book read. 2 things you will do as a result of hearing the book read. And 1 book you will read this week. Remember, reading energizes and develops soul.